good way to start a talk is silence. I'm talking English, Francesco, you...
Yes, but not simultaneously.
Not simultaneously, but I make pauses, intervals,
yes.
so that you have
short
time.
Se puoi fare frasi corte, perché se me ne scordo.
Eventually, tell me, short sentences. So, I am particularly glad to be here. I was checking at home and my membership card of the Institute goes back to 1971. 1971. And there is the signature of Ida Palombi, who was the personal assistant of Assagioli for so many years, decades. Which means that I was in touch with psychosynthesis 1 year before through Piero Ferrucci. It was in the most unusual situation to practice psychosynthesis in the army.
In the army?
See, I was served at that time. It was compulsory serving the army in Italy, and both Piero and me, we were in the fencing team of the Italian army. What happened is that we became friends. He was at the start of his army service. I was nearly at the end, but he's quite older than me. That must be clear. And he introduced me to meditation right away. So at that time I was completing my degree in law, so I was very far from this world, absolutely far. Then we kept in touch in the following years, and he said to me, I organized for you, you can meet Assagioli. And I said, well, I never asked for that, but fine. So it was 1971 when I started to see Assagioli, and I was following his teachings until the end, when he died in 1974. And in a very soft way, he changed completely my mind, my objectives, my plans, because I was supposed to become a judge. And I found myself to be in this psychosynthesis world for nearly 50 years at this point. So, when I was thinking what to share with you, I can see somebody saying no more anecdotes about Assagioli. When I was thinking to this postcard that many of us have from the past in the present for the future. With the picture of the cosmos. And that's the thread of my talk today. But I want to speak of what was to study with Assagioli at that time, and what has been, in my view, the development of psychosynthesis and what I would like to see in the future for the next 50 years. When I met the first time Assagioli, I was 21, he was 83. And I had no experience of old people. I had no grandparents. When I was a student in 1968, this date says something. So to find myself talking to this old man and was saying, "Come when you want," he said to me, the first time that we met. And I lived in a city which is 1 hour something from here, so it was not so easy to come, and I couldn't understand why I was coming. But I felt it was good to come, but no reason. And then he was giving me a lot of books. Book therapy, you know? Now it's fashionable book therapy. He was giving me, I would say, a book every week. And at a certain point, Piero Ferrucci used to go to the States in the summer. So he said to me, "You are very lucky. You can be the secretary of Assagioli in August." Thanks a lot. August in a small village in the countryside in Tuscany. Not even the nice village that you imagine, an ugly one. Capolona is really ugly. And I remember that before going to Capolona in the summer, he asked me to pack some books. He was moving probably 100 books every summer from Florence to Capolona, from Capolona to Florence. And he asked me to pack the books. Sort of high-level commitment for a university student. And I was very bad with my hands, so I was struggling with the strings and so on, and saying, "This is the most difficult things. Why do I come to Florence to pack books?" And then I felt absolutely joyful in doing this thing, which had no sense for me, I was not good at, but I felt I was absolutely joyful. And then there was a meditation with Assagioli. Every meeting with Assagioli ended with a short meditation. Then there was the full moon meditation, which was a meeting in which you could find the strangest kind of group together. Young students, healers, old British lady lost in Florence. It was really bizarre. in this meeting. And so when I went to Capolone that summer, which was a big fight with my girlfriend at the time, say, no, we are not going to the sea. I am going to Capolone. I go along, and then it came out that there were a lot of American young students coming. So which made a lot of troubles with my girlfriend. She was very jealous of Diana Whitmore.
Why do you laugh? I can imagine.
Can you repeat that sentence?
No, I tried to keep the line just for fear, out of fear.
I just understood Diana Whitmore. She was beautiful.
Yeah, she was very charming lady, very interesting. And I was coming from a little provincial city in Tuscany, and there was California. So it was another world. So
Almost like here now.
yeah, that's one of the points. I discovered that this doctor that nearly nobody knew in the academic world, and nobody mentioned it. Someone who knew him said, "Oh, he was a visionary, a spiritualist." This was when I took my degree in psychology. I make a point not to pronounce the word psychosynthesis in all the 5 years to protect my degree.
The wall of silence.
The wall of silence. So there I discovered that it was international, that it attracted people from all over the world, people very, very interesting, smart, vivid, and so it changes my perspective even of the situation. Which were the personal qualities of Assagioli? The first one was a sort of calm joy, an atmosphere of calm joy in which you felt included. One point which was very interesting, it was a sort of detachment from you personally. It took a lot of care of you. For instance, I must say, he has been extremely generous with me. For instance, I never paid a penny to see Assagioli. At the same time, you had this sense of total freedom, and that he was not attached to you, which made me jealous of other students. Interesting. So, for instance, I was jealous of Diana. So it was a sort of triangle. My girlfriend, Assagioli, me, and it was complex. Complex to deal. The other point, which was very interesting to me, it was the simplicity of the words of Assagioli, very misleading. Very misleading, because you must imagine a young intellectual leftist student reading the first book of Assagioli and saying, okay, no?
Plain water.
Yeah, a sort of grandfather advices for life. Then, in a book that came about his early ages, it came the list of what he was reading when he was 18. And you had Eastern philosophy, medicine, psychology, an enormous branch, an enormous large view culture. As you know, currently read and speak 3 languages, and he was traveling and meeting people. Those things you all know. Those things you know. So this simplicity, it was a sort of a, I don't know if it is the right word in English, distillation. Distillation, you know? You can be simple in your talk when you have done a lot of work about complexity.
Synthesis.
Synthesis. Bertrand Russell, who was very clear in his writings, said once, everybody take me seriously because they know that I could write the same book in mathematics. So simplicity is a very interesting point in his teachings. Generosity, yes, definitely. I can tell you that he died in August. He worked with people until the last week. And he was not one of those strong old men. He was very weak. I remember once he was recording our session, then he wanted to stop the tape recorder. He couldn't make. And he began to laugh. He began to laugh that he had not enough strength to intellectual strength and extreme clear mind. Extreme clear mind. Absolute clear mind. And he was making always plan for new books. But he didn't like to write. That's the truth. He started writing the books when he was close to die, when he was around 70. And so he was supposed to die in the night. And in the next morning, Ida, his assistant, found him quite better, and they said they kicked me back. There is some work to do. Then he wrote the books. The Act of Will, which is the other books, Psychosynthesis, the one who made him famous around, was a collection of different writings. So the Act of Will is the book, and then there was this plan of the book about the self, which is so great class. Assagioli had his belief systems, like everybody in this room. But he didn't want to mix up the two things. His belief system about the teachings coming from the theosophical background and from Alice Bailey and the Blue Books, he didn't want to mix up with psychosynthesis. That was extremely clear and, to my opinion, extremely wise. Because I can tell you an anecdote. Quite recently, one of my young colleagues, a very bright psychotherapist, she was invited in a conference of psychiatrists, and one of the psychiatrists attacked her brutally, saying, "Why do you come in a scientific community when Assagioli was an occultist?" Occultist, which was not, of course, but that was the sense. No, that was the sense. So I think that it's like to make confusion. Let's say, of course, Teilhard de Chardin come from a Christian background. but you don't read his theories related, saying, no, I'm Buddhist, I cannot read Teilhard de Chardin. No, doesn't make any sense. So, of course, the belief system is part of the void, it's part of the map, and it's an orientation. Now, this wall of silence, I would say, is full of holes.
Yes.
No? But still, I think that so there is nothing to hide, and there is to make a clear distinction. One day he gave to me to read The Light of the Soul, the commentary of Alice Bailey to Patanjali Yoga Sutras. And I read the book with interest, and then I said to him, oh, I see connections. And he said, yes, there are connections, but if you are not interested, just study psychosynthesis. Then Assagioli, he was a trickster. You could have come and say, I said to him, I am a socialist. And he said, me too. And I was quite sure that he was saying me too to any possible, except fascism, because he had been persecuted. But that was the way. It was about inclusion. No? What there is behind this attitude, it's about the attitude of inclusion, intellectual inclusion. If you read again psychosynthesis, there is all this connection with Jungian analysis, and there is this invitation to see more the point of contact between different theories and practice. What is this if not disidentification? There is a strong tendency in every school, but in psychosynthesis, I would say particularly, to a strong identification with psychosynthesis, which is a risk. Like any identification, because it becomes rigid, it becomes a crutch for identity. Crutch is what I see a crutch today. So that comes, that's why I came to my unconscious now. So that's an interesting point, even because in what has happened in the last 40 years is that this is happening. I sit in a table with a psychoanalyst, with a Jungian, and we do intervision as therapists, but the psyche is one. I mean, we have maps, different maps, but the object is there. So different maps offer different perspectives. My great friend Massimo Rosselli, to somebody who was talking about I am Buddhist or anything, the umbrella is great. The umbrella is great. So it's about inclusion.
Massimo che comunque qualcuno si presentasse sotto qualunque luce ideologica e diceva ma l'ombrello è ampio.
So psychosynthesis is a large system. So I remember one of the last interviews that he gave, I think probably the last year, or nearly the last year, there are two interviews very important. One is the one with Sam Keen for Psychology Today. And Sam Keen said, which is the weak point of psychosynthesis? And Assagioli said it can be too large. So sometimes I say to the students, the risk of psychosynthesis is that instead of an ovoid, it becomes, come si dirà botte? For the wine, a big
barrique.
barrel. It can become a barrel. So you shut down the spiritual and you shut down the lower unconscious, and you have a sort of pop psychosynthesis, ready-made, prêt-à-porter. No, something cheap. Yeah. That's the risk. For instance, when I Google psychosynthesis in the web, despair for so many rubbish, the worst of the new age packed as psychosynthesis. And this is even interesting because, on the contrary, when Assagioli had his view, his insights, his intuitions, his experiences about the psyche, he wrote many things, many techniques that now neuroscience shows perfectly fitting. Piero Ferrucci is doing some work about that, neuroscience and psychosynthesis. But in a sense, what should happen is what happened in the 70s with physics, when it came out the book of Fritjof Capra, The Tao of Physics, putting together ancient wisdom and modern quantistic physics. That should happen for psychosynthesis as well.
Sta succedendo adesso quello che è successo nella fisica decenni fa, questa stessa capacità di trovare nelle scienze uno strumento interpretativo.
So sometimes psychosynthesis tends to be too closed inside, not too relating enough with other theories, other systems, the world of science. It's very interesting to beyond any form of hagiography. Is this an English word? Hagiography. To make a saint. Assagioli made his mistakes. For instance, it's very interesting, when Assagioli died, the Institute went in a deep crisis, and there was a conflict, which is a sort of very archetypal repeating situation when the father dies and the siblings have to split the kingdom.
Qui cade a Casa Assagioli, è stato un adesso del Santo, sta raccontando dei conflitti che si scatenavano nell'istituto della sua morte. E lui dice tutto quello che succede sempre quando muore un re e i figli tentano di diversi errori.
So there was some work unfinished in the transition, for instance.
Quindi è rimasto del lavoro da fare.
Then I think that in Assagioli's writing there is not enough about sexuality.
Not about?
About sexuality.
Assagioli ha trattato troppo poco della sessualità.
It has
Almost nothing.
almost nothing, we could say. Almost nothing. And that's why in most of the trainings there was so little about sexuality for decades in the body. The body was the big absent. Eros. Eros, the power of Eros. Of course, he was a man born in 2 centuries ago. 2 centuries ago. I tell you a story that Piero told me. One day, Betty Friedman, one of the first, feminist, big name, she was interested in psychosynthesis. So she came to meet Assagioli. And Assagioli said to Ida, the assistant, gave her the pamphlets in English.
On women.
And Piero told Ida, don't give her the one about women. Which, but she did. But Betty Friedman never showed up again.
At least.
But it's very interesting because from one side, if you want to, it was speaking of an archetype, the goddess Vesta. The goddess Vesta, the mythos. Estia. Who take care of the fire in the house. No? From one side, so it was archetype. From the other side, it was the man. At my time, when I entered in psychosynthesis, we are mostly men. Mostly. Nearly. In SIPT, it was all the trainings were men. Now we are in the kingdom of women. We are president, vice president. So we have passed to the matriarch. But it's very interesting that he gave this interview to Servan Schreiber, this important journalist and essayist French, and he gave a totally different view of the women. And it was at the end of his life.
That was in which year?
Yeah, in 72.
72.
So it has evolved.
It was after.
Well, he speaks of equality and difference. Equality and difference. So he had a very open attitude. Let's say he had lost the cultural prejudice of his time. No, think that that's horrible to say, but still in 1984 in Italy, there was a law in which if somebody raped a woman, but then married her, he was not going to prison. So, we are speaking of 1984. Is there anyone from Switzerland here?
No.
If I'm not wrong, the vote to women in Switzerland is in the 70s.
77.
77. No?
1970.
So, we are not speaking of some third world. No, we are speaking of Switzerland, in the center. So, which other mistakes he did? He was in a hurry. He was in a hurry. He was at the end of his life. He needed students, which could. There was a sort of lack of a middle generation. He has been, as you all know, a pioneer in psychoanalysis and so on. But then, he missed the guys in their 50s, so to say. No? So he was a sort of putting in the arena people very fast. Some of them with personal stuff uncooked. So he made some wrong choices, even if he had a great intuition, but the need to have, especially medical doctors, because he needed medical doctors for the recognition at the time. Imagine that in Italy the first faculty of psychology comes in 1972.
Yeah, 72 or 73.
Something like that. Well, I think that what this sort of, who are the people attracted by psychosynthesis? No? As clients, as patients, as collaborators, as people interested, people on a spiritual quest in some way. I use the word spiritual in an existential sense. It doesn't imply for me any necessity of a world beyond this world. This belongs to my personal beliefs, yes or no. But I am in good company because the Dalai Lama, to someone asking him, should I know my past lives? Dalai Lama answered, if they are past, non So, in some way, many of us have a side, a devotional side, which can be located on Assagioli, on the Bailey, on the my institution, whatever. No, you can locate devotion wherever you go. And how many heads have been cut because of devotions? Literally or symbolically? In the incapacity to accept difference. Which is a childish scientific attitude. So I think that we have to honor the father and to kill him.
Honor the father and kill the father. The father, yes.
Yeah. What I mean, for instance, in my view, only recently there are books who make some step forward in the theory and practice of psychosynthesis. We have been to so many conferences, no, Carl. How many times we have repeated the same stuff? No. It was like really a sort of wheel coming to the same point, without courage. The courage to think. Today is different. It's coming different. I loved the discussion about the void, which came from John Furman and Anguilla. Because it questioned a core point of the map. And I have my ideas about that, which goes together, for instance, with the quantic wave theory of physics. They are both true, and they are and they cannot stay together, but it's not an either or. They are maps. And Assagioli had on his desk the book of Korzybski, General Semantic, and one of the main points of the book is the map is not the territory. So if we treat Assagioli's book as a sort of Quran or Bible, we are making a very bad service to psychosynthesis.
And to Assagioli.
And to Assagioli, who was so different from that. So for instance, I'm reflecting on the star of functions and I'm questioning the star of function as it is. We'll talk about it in another occasion. I think that when Assagioli died, the institute was very small. There were this little society of psychotherapy, very small as well. And yes, there were centers in England, in the States is a particular situation. So I asked myself, is it going to last, psychosynthesis, as an institution, as a theory? Because it was not such big ground, exactly. And the fact that we are here, it's so nice, for instance, for me to be here, to know that we have met so many times teaching together in foreign countries, and Ami is a deep friend from Sweden, and we do things together, and there is this, and Spain is appearing. Spain is returning, hola. So that means that the fact that I think that we are in a good health in general. We need more courage, more thinking, and to expand the world outside the institutions.
Outside the institution.
Outside. Work in prisons, work in schools. I'm very interested in the work in education. I tell you a story about when I had this degree in law, and Assagioli threw me to do some psychotherapy, which I didn't know anything about. So I asked Piero, what should I say to people? He said, don't say too much. That's already half good therapy. But then we had all these techniques. So I did my first session, and then I went to Piero, and Piero said, how it went? I said, I think it went good. What did you do? I did 3 or 4 exercises. I was throwing exercise to the clients so to keep them quiet. Not to disturb me. Not to discover. So I was starting to see some clients, but I was in sort of embarrassment because I had a degree in law. And so a degree in law doing psychological work didn't sound very well. And one day I go to visit Assagioli, and he has cut from the newspaper an ad about there will be place for 20,000 new teachers. In that time I was following a course for teaching, but just because it was teaching psychology, so that I could put this diploma on the card for no other reason. And when he gave me this piece of the newspaper, it was not really for me. I mean, I couldn't apply for that saying it was not the time for, I had nothing to do with that article. Well, then I did this degree for teachers in psychology, social psychology. And then I stopped one way, and I had my study here in the institute, up there. So one day I said to myself, well, I'm sure there are no places for teachers in Florence because too many people, and they have never taught 1 hour in a school. Let me stop in Pistoia, half the way between Lucca and Florence. And in Pistoia there was just one place for teaching psychology. So Assagioli was right. And there was a teacher in a high school of psychology for 20 years, which is the work I love it the best. And I still am more interested.
All'interno dei giornali c'era una ricerca per le medicine e delle cose per le ricerche di psicologia. Io stavo facendo il corso di cercare assieme e comunque alla fine del corso preso questo giornale e scoprì che a Pistoia c'era un posto per l'insegnamento di psicologia che si inserire nella provincia di quell'Italia e così poter andare a fare a insegnare psicologia, insomma.
Most of you, many of you, I think that you have seen the documentary about Assagioli's life, one in English, and I was there with other students, with Diana as well, when Assagioli died, and I must say that 1 week before dying, he had been sick already, then he recovered, and then he told me, against every catastrophic vision, I'm not yet dead. Then he died 1 week later. Massimo was with him, Roberto, me, Piero came from the States. Sergio Bartoli, certo. Non era lì. He was not there. Brunelli was there. Okay. Anyhow, so what I wanted to share was the past, my experience of the past, and the specific tunes of this meeting, which is still very present. So for me, it's even fascinating to teach in place in which Assagioli is just a few books. No? But I see a lineage, and I see a lineage that comes much before psychosynthesis. No? That's important. And the point which interests me to share is about where are we going? Where are we going? Which are the next steps?